and there's going to be a need, or there's going to be something, and I can either give it to the Lord, or I can have something come up that'll just take it from me. You know that's true. You're not willing to give to the Lord, and you're going to find out that you'll give it anyway. You just won't receive the blessing from it. And it'll just be taken from you. And I know Christians that just try to hold on to everything. And believer, I want to say to you that what you need is not warmer clothes, is not more to eat, is not more to drink, is not a better savings account. What you need is the presence of God in your life. Amen. And if you don't have that, things aren't okay. If you don't have that, things aren't okay. Here is the nation of Israel, and they're in a time of building, and they're building the house of the Lord, and the work has ceased. But the work has ceased because man is looking to his needs, and is not looking to honor God. You know, sometimes the work of the Lord has needs. Sometimes the work of the Lord has needs, and you know whose responsibility it is to meet the needs of the work of the Lord? His people. God's people. That's us. Weans, as they say in the South. And do you know that if you decide not to do the work of the Lord, do you know that you'll have a lack? And God said to Haggai, there's a lack in your lives. There's something that's missing. There's something that you need. And your problem is you take care of yourself, but you can't do it. You know, I've come to realize in the last year how very true this is. Last fall, just a couple of months before this time, I found out my dad had cancer. And it was kind of sudden and very unexpected. My dad's always been very healthy, but he had cancer. And it kind of shakes you up a little bit when something like that happens, because you realize that there are some things that you just can't do anything about. I'm a take action kind of person. And when there's a problem, I do something. And I just, you come to me and you tell me a problem. Don't tell me a problem unless you want me to start you off on something or to begin doing. So you come tell me about a problem, I'm going to start doing something. That's my personality. But you find out about something like this and there's nothing you can do. You say, well, what caused it? Well, we don't know. The Lord gave it to him. That's what he says. That's his testimony. And ultimately, there's a lot of things that you have to settle and you have to understand. And then this year in March, my sister, who's a year and a half older than me, and she found out she was expecting a couple months before that, and then she found out she had cancer. And it was a big deal, and it's very frightening. I found out it was a very invasive cancer, and that it was fast growing, and it was very dangerous. She's faced with decisions that were just unbelievable. The amount of decisions you had to make. You know what you learned in those times? You learn that the only thing you can do is give it to the Lord and trust Him. You have to make decisions, but what's the good of a decision if God's not in it? And you learn that that your life is in God's hands. He's the breath giver. And boy, if He wants to, you'll live forever. And if He doesn't want to, if He deems to take you, that's it. And there's nothing that you can do to change those circumstances. Do you know that, Christian, most of our lives, unless something goes wrong, we live as though we hold our own destiny in our hands? That's not a biblical philosophy. That's the world's philosophy. Do you know whose life or whose hand your life is in? That it's God. He's the life giver. He's the breath giver. And I want to tell you something. You don't know how much God's going to give you. And you can make yourself a priority. And you can make your needs a great priority and say, hey, this is about me, and I'm going to meet my needs first, and after that I'll serve the Lord. I just want to tell you something. Those people never get to serve God. Those are the people that always lack, and they never have enough. You know, with regard to giving God your time, your service, your talents, and your treasures, that if you wait until you've got time, you'll never have time. That if you wait till you've got the ability, you'll never have the ability. That if you wait until you have the money in the bank, you'll never have enough money. Do you know that that's always true? Why is that? Because there's a philosophy that says, I have to take care of myself. Do you know that those individuals that are serving God are not living that way? And those individuals whom God is blessing, they're not living that way? You know what they say? I have to serve the Lord. I have to serve the Lord. And so Haggai preaches this message to the nation of Israel. And now we'll go back to Ezra chapter 5 and we'll see what happens. Verse 3 of Ezra chapter 5, verse 2, this man Zerubbabel, who Haggai brought this message to, The Bible says, Then rose up Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and began to build the house of God, which is at Jerusalem, and with them were the prophets of God helping them. Now there's a little difference here. Before, the individuals helping at Jerusalem, it was everyone. Everyone was giving to the work of the Lord. Everyone was doing the work of the Lord. Haggai has come with a message from God, and he has said, you need to make God first in your life and yourselves second in your life, and you'll find that God will take care of your needs, and when you sow, there will be a great increase. When you go to make yourself warm, you'll be more than warm. When you go to drink, you'll have more than enough to drink. Things will be the opposite if you do things God's way. And a few people have decided to follow God in faith. Now there's a difference between what we saw at the beginning. Before, it was everybody came to Jerusalem. It was all unified. Here we find a contrast. Now they've been commanded by the king to stop. And yet these individuals have been commanded by God to start. And though there is opposition, these individuals have made a decision that they are going to be the first to serve the Lord. You know, there's always the first people. When there's success, it's a guarantee that folks are going to come and join. Isn't that true? Well, I've seen it in churches. Boy, I mean, when you go through the beginning phases of a church, and we're kind of coming through that beginning phase in our church, and you get started, boy, you go out and you're enthusiastic and you're excited about what the Lord's going to do, but everybody else is waiting to see it happen. And then after it starts to go well and things start to grow, then folks will come and they'll come alongside. By the way, I'm not against that. I'm for that. I'm for anybody becoming part of the Lord's work. But you know, there's got to be some people that are first. There's got to be some people that say, you know what, it's not all about whether or not I have enough to eat. It's not all about whether or not I have my needs met. It's about whether or not God's pleased with my life, and I'll trust God that I've got enough to eat and that He's pleased. And that is Zerubbabel. And that is this individual by the name of Jozadak, or Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and these prophets. And so here's what happens. At that same time came to them Tatnai, the governor on this side of the river, and Shetharboznai and their companions, and said thus unto them, Who hath commanded you to build this house and to make up this wall? Then said we unto them after this manner, What are the names of the men that make this building? But the eye of their God was upon the elder of the Jews, that they could not cause them to cease, till the matter came to Darius, and then they returned answer by letter concerning this matter. Now they've been told to stop, but Darius hasn't told them to stop, and they've started the work of the Lord. And these individuals have come and they've said, Who told you to do this? And they just said, God did. We're going to do it. And so then they said, well, let's have a list of names. That's kind of intimidating. That is, you know, they come in and write down their names, and they're going to send their names to Darius and say, this is a rebel that is doing something he's not supposed to do, and it's a serious matter. And their response simply is they just kept on working. They said, well, you know, if there's going to be opposition, we better get some work done first. You know, hey, if we're going to have to fight, we better hurry up and get as much work done as we can. You know, that'll be your attitude to opposition, Christian. Opposition will come and it'll try to intimidate. They always do. They try to intimidate you. And when they come to intimidate you, what you've got to remember is we've got some work to do. And so let's get it done as quickly as we can. Let's sow as much of the seed of the Word of God as we can before the opposition, if it's going to cause us to stop. Let's live for God before Jesus comes, if you will, because time's running out. And so that was their attitude, and they continued. So then this guy, Tatnai, the governor, he sent a letter to Darius the king, and it starts like this, and we'll be finished in just a minute. Verse 8, he says, Be it known unto the king, that we went into the province of Judea to the house of the great God, which is built with great stones and timbers laid in the walls, and this work goeth fast on, and prospereth in their hands. Then asked me those elders, and said unto them thus, Who commanded you to build this house, and to make up these walls? We asked their names also to certify thee, that we might write the names of the men that were the chief of them. And thus they returned us answer, saying, We are the servants of the God of the heaven and earth, and build the house that was builded these many years ago, which a great king of Israel builded and set up. But after that our fathers had provoked the God of heaven unto wrath. He gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the Chaldean, who destroyed this house and carried the people away into Babylon. But in the first year of Cyrus, king of Babylon, the same King Cyrus, made a decree to build this house of God. And the vessels also of gold and silver of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took out of the temple that was in Jerusalem, and brought them into the temple of Babylon. Those did Cyrus the king take out of the temple. Now, verse 17 will conclude the letter. Now therefore, if it seem good to the king, let there be search made in the king's treasure house, which is there at Babylon, whether it be so that a decree was made of Cyrus the king to build this house of God at Jerusalem, and let the king send his pleasure to us concerning this matter. I want to point out something to you, and that is that there was a law that was written that the temple was supposed to be built. It was on the books in Babylon. And when Artaxerxes the king received this letter of opposition, he should have looked to see if they were in their right to do what he did. Instead, what he did was look to see if it would be a problem, and he put a stop to them. The nation of Israel is in their right, and they've got a law on their side, and they're going to abide by it. And so they're doing the work of the Lord, and look what God does. Verse 6, look at the attitude of this Darius, who would not be the same Darius that we would see coming into Babylon at first. This would be, boy, there's a lot of Dariuses, and this is another one. This would be after Artaxerxes. Then Darius the king made a decree, and search was made in the house of the rolls where the treasures were laid up in Babylon. And there was found at Achmetha in the palace that is in the province of the Medes a roll, and therein was a record written. Here's the record. In the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be builded, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid, the height thereof 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 80 cubits, and so on, detailing the building of the temple. Now look at verse 6. Now therefore, Tatnai governor beyond the river, Shetharboznai, and your companions, the Apharsashites, which are beyond the river, be ye far from thence. Let the work of this house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of God in this place. Moreover, I make a decree what ye shall do to the elders of these Jews for building of this house of God, that of the king's goods, even of the tribute beyond the river, forthwith expenses be given unto these men, that they be not hindered. And that which they have need of, both young bullocks and rams and lambs, for the burnt offerings of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the appointment, and so on. In verse 11, also I make a decree that whosoever shall alter this word, let timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged thereon. Okay, so now here's the rule. Tatnai, I don't know if you're against this work that the Lord is doing or not, but here's the law for it. If anyone opposes my decree as king regarding this, we're going to pull timber off his house, and we're going to use it to make gallows, and we're going to hang you on it. And things have changed. Things have changed. And God's building's getting built. And the God that hath caused his name to dwell there, destroy all kings and people, Darius includes himself, that shall put to their hand to alter and to destroy this house of God which is at Jerusalem. I, Darius, have made a decree, let it be done with speed. And God's house got built. God's temple was built. Christian, I want to point out to you that there will most certainly be a call to work. There always is going to. Don't be discouraged at God calling you to do something. Boy, I know Christians and they see a task and it just seems so momentous, and I feel that way sometimes, as I'm just called to accomplish something that I know is beyond my strength and beyond my ability, and I just don't have the answers for. And sometimes the task is really big like that, and that's like building this temple. I'm going to just tell you something. If God's called you to it, He hasn't called you to have the strength. He's just called you to obey. Go do it. Go do the work of the Lord. And take on the task that God has called you to. You know what you'll find out? You'll find that His grace is sufficient. And that He's able. He's always able. And when there's opposition, friend, be careful to have discernment. To determine those individuals that are really for the Lord and those who just say they are. I'll tell you, one of the things that will hinder the work of the Lord more than anything else is someone who in the name of God tries to join you, who is not one of His. It'll just hinder the work.